Hey, this is Nick Millivoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarist podcast, where each week we are talking about one of the 100 guitar players we think you should know about. Today, we're talking about Tony Iommi.
That's
right.
We have a
special guest.
Angus Clark is joining us. You might have seen Angus on Trans-Siberian Orchestra tour. He's been doing that for a while. You might have seen him in the Rock of Ages band on Broadway. You might have seen him in any number of various rock bands. He's been way back in the day, even played with Guitaro. And but now he's with us today. We're finally opening the velvet rope, if you will, Nick. Bringing Angus into the fold, because there are probably few people on earth I know who are more tuned in to the fine art of Tony Iommi than Angus Clark.
Okay, and he has some pretty cool guitars to show for it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, does some playing in the episode. We break down the nuances that we need to break down. And when I ran into him at NAMM, I just said, hey, just tell me your favorite guitar players. And he starts listing off people. And as soon as he hit Iommi, I was like, yep, that's the one. That's the one we're having you for.
Before we get talking to Angus, before we start talking Tony, we want to remind you can get at us by sending us an email to 100guitarists@premierguitar.com. You can text or leave us a voicemail at 319-423-9734. And we are very happy to tell you that today's episode is sponsored by the Rocky Mountain Slide Company. We got a couple episodes sponsored by Doc over at Rocky Mountain Slides. And we're going to be talking in each episode. We're going to tell you about, we have a couple favorites here. He sent us some care packages. So we're going to break it up and talk about a couple products that we like. For me, the first thing when I opened that box, the first thing I went to were these two tone bars. I play lap steel a bit. You can see my lap steel over there in the background. I looked at these and I said, hey, these look very cool. This one you can see has some sparkle going on. And this one is this like opaque, but like semi-translucent blue. And I looked at these and I thought, wow, that's really cool. He's got a really nice finish on this sparkle tone bar and this cool blue. This must be some kind of like weird acrylic or something. So anyway, so Doc and I got on a call last week. I was asking about these. I was totally wrong. These are both made out of stone. Okay.
What's your favorite shape? Like the completely round or the one with like the notches on it?
It depends. I go back and forth. I like them for different reasons. Different kind of stuff. I'm not really enough of a lap steel player to tell you exactly precisely why I use one more than the other. It's more just a feel thing. Sometimes I grab one and I say, no, I want the other. Basically that, but I do go between them. And both of these sound a little bit different from each other. And they sound a lot different than a metal slide, which is or metal tone bar, which is what I usually use. So if you mess around with lap steel or with pedal steel and you're looking for new materials, totally check one of these out. So this one, this sparkle tone bar, that's made of limestone. Pretty cool. And then this one here, that is a smoky quartz. And when you look at it real close in the right light, I don't think it'll get picked up by the camera, but you can actually see it's almost like a wood grain that's in here. It's super cool. Anyway, you could space out and stare at that for a while.
I'm a longtime user of Rocky Mountain Slides because I've had this little pinky slide, the signature Ted Drzdowski slide, for a number of years now. Awesome. It's been sitting on my desk. But, of course, Doc sent me a nice care package. So the slides I knew were pretty cool. The big surprise to me was he makes a bunch of these handcrafted picks. And I am such a pick nerd. I have a big, literally bucket of picks. Like, those clear things with the round lid that you see? They're like almost square with like an angle cut off. I have one of those full of different types of picks I've collected over the years. And fun fact, recently I washed them.
You washed all your picks?
I just washed all my picks. It made a huge difference. If that's all you take away from this episode, once in a while, throw them in a strainer, throw some hot water on them, spread them out, let them dry. They'll feel brand new. Because you get oil on. You get oil from your hand on your pick. What's up?
Get a real clean tone.
Real clean tone. So I came across I was super impressed and interested in all the picks he sent. And this one has become a quick favorite. This is the Bone Tri-Pick number 102. It has this little ridge there for your thumb. It's what I like about thick picks is you get the tone of it. I really like the tone of a thick pick, but depending on how they treat the edges might make or break it, really. Because if the edges aren't tapered in the right way, if you feel like you're just like ham-fisted like a hammer through it. You know what I mean? Like you just can't get any real motion or velocity. But these have such a nice taper on it. And normally I don't play picks this big. I'm more what's another one he sent here? I'm more kind of maybe this shape. Here's another Bone one.
Okay.
You know, but this tri-pick, it sits so comfortably that what sticks out is not that much different than a regular shaped pick.
Yeah.
And what I really like is I don't necessarily hear the pick going through the string because the taper is right on the edges.
Yeah.
The taper is correct on the edges.
So some people prefer a different pick for electric and a different pick for acoustic.
Yes.
What's your take there?
Yes. Yes to all that. I don't want to spoil what I possibly could be featuring in an upcoming pick corner with Jason. But this one for me, is an electric pick.
Okay.
That's what this one's for.
Okay.
There are some he sent that I think do better on acoustic. And there's even, I'll spoil this. I've never really seen this kind of shape before. Kind of like offset a little bit, you know? That's real. I have he sent a couple of these that are this shape. And I'm still trying to figure out the best way to use these. This one's real slim taper on it. It's hard to see that. But so I'm trying to figure out what's working best for me there. But that shape I really like. I've never really used that shape before. So come for the slides, stay for the picks, I think is probably the motto there.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot of stuff to explore.
Yes.
Over to his site, there's all different materials and shapes and sizes.
And they're not like, a lot of times you think of boutique picks as being like ridiculously expensive. These are not. Yeah. You know, I mean, you don't want to.
Same with the slides. It's like it's cheaper than buying even an inexpensive pedal, and I find the changing material like can really change your sound.
Yeah. Lazy man's EQ. It's the laziest way to change the EQ of your playing. And I mean, these aren't ones you're going to want to throw out after a show. Let's be real. You're going to want to keep track of them, but they're not like, so expensive. If you drop one or leave one at a gig, you're not freaking out.
Right. Exactly. So head over to check out the Rocky Mountain Slide Company. If you hit up Doc, tell him we sent you, and because he's the guy you're gonna get. It's one guy doing everything over there. He's in Colorado, and when we talked, he showed me. He's sitting there. He's got a great view out of his window, enjoying nature. So hit him up. See what you can get into. I keep getting distracted. I got some more slides on my desk, but I'm going to save those for later. Those are
as do I. Yes.
I want to be like, and look at this and these cool things. Look at this cool stuff he's making. So we'll stick to these. All right. So now we're going to bring on Angus, and we're going to talk about Tony Iommi.
Let's go. To kick things off, we're going to kind of dive deep, and we want this to be kind of a rough overview of Tony's playing style and his career for somebody who maybe who's maybe heard of Tony, maybe heard of Black Sabbath, but might want to know some of the deeper nooks and crannies that the real players check out. But first, tell us about the first time you heard Tony Iommi.
It was on the radio. I heard Paranoid. I heard the song on the radio. And I think everything about it spoke to me, but then really the lyric, just tell a joke and I will sigh and you will laugh and I will cry. I don't know, at that time in my life, I was just like, what is that? That dude is talking right to me. What's going on? And I was all in. Yeah.
And you were how old again?
Oh, I mean, that had to be 8th grade.
Playing guitar already or no?
but I had taken guitar lessons early on, and when I was really young, because my parents were very focused on music, but I hadn't really stuck with anything. And then I really took up the guitar seriously when The Wall came out. So I don't know if that's 80, 81.
Yep.
So so then that's when I was listening as a guitar player, and then the thing with Sabbath evolved very quickly. And one of the first solos that I ever learned, maybe the first solo that I ever learned off the record, was Tomorrow's Dream from the Volume 4 record. That was like yeah.
How did it feel? So did Sabbath become like your favorite band pretty quickly?
Yeah, well, Sabbath and Floyd.
Right.
And then, at the time that I was getting into it, of course, Dio was the lead singer in Sabbath. And so I went to see the Mob Rules tour with Ronnie James Dio at Madison Square Garden. So I saw the Mob Rules tour, which was amazing. And that was, the lineup with Vinny Appice and Ronnie James Dio.
I have some friends that make fun of me quite a bit because the first Van Halen I ever heard was Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
And
oh man, that's okay.
We've talked about this.
That's totally legit.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't realize at the time there was multiple lead singers. I'm just some knucklehead teenager who's listening to Van Halen. Somebody's like, "Oh, you got to hear Running with the Devil." I was like, "Okay." Comes on the radio. I'm like, "Wow, Sammy sounded real different." Because this was before the internet, when you really kind of knew the ins and outs of the lineup changes and all that. Did you probably were much smarter than me and knew that there was an Ozzy era and then a Dio era and then so on, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was really steeped into, I had all of these on LP, so I'm just looking at pictures of Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill. And, I loved the Paranoid album, the first album, the Paranoid album, Volume 4. I also liked, I think Sweet Leaf from Master of Ecstasy. I can't get this wrong.
Master Reality.
Master Reality was one of the first songs I played with a band. And there's so much good riffage on that record as well. But the sound of that record is not as clear as the first two records. And then Volume 4 is just completely legendary in my book, from songs and everything. And that picture of Tony in the gatefold, when you bought it, it was a single album, but it was a gatefold. And I think it originally came with it came with two folded up posters, like one of Bill and one of Ozzy. And in the gatefold, you had a picture of Tony and Geezer. And that picture of Tony with the red, what became known as the monkey guitar, with the red SG Junior, I was like, when am I going to have one of those? Because that's just, and he's wearing like a dashiki. He's wearing one of those kind of African shirts. Like,
we're going to need to track down. We're going to see if we can track down that photo and put it right here.
Yeah.
Right? So we can see what you're talking about.
It's from the inside of the Volume 4 jacket. So, yeah. So by the time I saw them at the Garden, I knew what I was getting into. But, that was an open debate at high school. And I was in high school at that point. And it was like, oh, Dio, bro, he's the man. All that kind of stuff.
So to give an overview, so the Black Sabbath, we have the Ozzy era first, then that ends with Never Say Die, right? Then Dio comes in for Heaven and Hell. And how long? And then Dio goes until when?
It's Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules, and then he was out by the time the live album came out.
Gotcha. And then Born Again is the only one with Ian Gillan, right?
It's the only one.
All right. And then just kind of going through Seventh Star.
Seventh Star was originally a Tony Iommi solo album that the label, I think, can't speak with any authority about this, but my understanding was it was just like, you know, we can't do anything for the label. Was like, we could put it out or we could put it out, you know,
Right.
like, can't really do anything for you unless you put the Black Sabbath name on it. So I think it actually said Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi.
Yep.
Iommi
That was
or
interesting.
something
And
like
then
that.
so 87, Tony Martin comes in.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
Eternal Idol was the first
Idol.
one. I like that. I like that record.
And then that kind of continues. Is that basically until they kind of end with Forbidden?
Headless, there's a Tear, Headless Cross, Forbidden.
Dehumanizer.
Off the dome right
Except
now.
Dehumanizer's Dio again.
Oh, right.
Dehumanizer's Dio.
Dio comes back.
So if we go from the front, right, we've got Black Sabbath, Paranoid,
Look at this.
Master of Reality, Volume 4, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Sabotage, Technical Ecstasy, Never Say Die.
There you go. That's the deal. Here's a fun game we tried one time at a Premier Guitar meeting. Is we went around the table and we're like, could you name a record that you can name every song off that record? Any record. Doesn't have to be Black, but like,
didn't even have to be in order.
Doesn't have to be in order.
Oh,
it's harder than you would think.
I don't think I'm up for that right now.
Yeah,
but we're all like going around the room.
No, you don't want to be recorded doing that.
That's a fun game because even your favorite record, there's always that like track or two that you're like, oh, that's right. I forgot about track 7 or whatever.
I mean, you could, But I mean, I was just listening to The Wall from the top this morning. Like, I don't know what put me in that mood, but
that's a lot of songs. That's a big challenge, even if that is your favorite record.
I wouldn't take on that challenge. Yeah.
Like, man,
so
good.
Man, I haven't listened to The Wall top to bottom in years. You might inspire me to do that.
And I have it on vinyl, and I have a turntable now again, so I could do that. But sorry, just to go back to I don't know where Dehumanizer falls in the Tony Martin. Was there more Tony Martin after Dehumanizer? I don't remember that.
Yeah, Dehumanizer was 92, and then Cross Purposes
94.
is 94, and Tony Martin's back.
With Geezer and Bobby Rondinelli.
Yeah. And they, there's footage from like those tours, and I have to say, Tony never phoned it in. I mean, I see footage of them in like smaller joints and like, Europe and stuff like that. Like, it wasn't, there wasn't that much heat around them, and I'm sure it was frustrating, but man, they were still playing with vengeance. He's just always there doing it. And I sent Jason, I sent you guys that footage of one of those tours with Cozy Powell on drums, and they're breaking out like Apache.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like what all those guys grew up on, right? That was like there when they were getting it together. It was learning those melodies and things.
So obviously the connecting point between all these records, and then of course we end with 13, which was the last Sabbath record. Ozzy comes back, right? That's how they kind of ended their studio records. And
there's one other one in there. There's him and Glenn Hughes, like an Iommi record.
Oh, okay.
Just Iommi.
But that's like really a solo record, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But in terms of Black Sabbath stuff, Tony is the link that's on every one of these records. As somebody who's not only studied but kind of lived through a bunch of these eras, how do you feel like his approach? You said he never phoned it in, right? How do you feel like his tonal approach changed through these different eras?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was thinking about, I like to think about that in context of what you have to imagine he was getting exposed to at various times in their career. But, if you just go from the top, he's got kind of like his aggressive blues lick style thing.
That's the thing that
but then he's got,
I identify the most with him is that style. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can hear he's got a couple of things, right? He's got the trilling thing, and he's got his use of sliding around through the into the from one shape to the next. You know, it's never like, it's always something. It's always sliding, like all the there's not a lot of just the pentatonic box. It's more, he's just always doing that, and you get that, and then you get his use of the bending to the ninth all the time, right? He's always, that's like on the opening lick of the, I'm not going to play too much for copyright reasons or whatever, but you know, if you're in E, right? Yeah. He's not bending. Right? The use of the ninth. And then then he's also got the Planet Caravan thing. He's got the really mellow stuff where he's playing more scalar, but it's usually it's still, you know, root 9 flat 3 kind of things and stuff like that. And but then there's the octaves and like Fairies Wear Boots and all that kind of stuff. So there's a bag of tricks there. And then, but then when you get to like Technical Ecstasy and Sabotage, Technical Ecstasy and stuff like that, like he starts doing, there's like a faster kind of a stream of consciousness, like almost, you know, Coltrane-ish kind of, it's like this more energetic thing. I think he's probably, you know, guitar was getting shreddier and he was, you know,
he probably felt the need to keep up, right? I mean,
yeah, to some degree. But I think on volume 4, you hear him take the trill thing to the next level because he's doing all that like that thing becomes like, and then like, you know, his live solo on like Live Evil is like that for like, you know, 5 minutes, you know, trilling. I mean, you know, you hear it later as well. But that's when I started to notice that thing, and that really caught my ear. I was like, man, that's just how, like, guys, you do that fast, you know? It's like, man, wow. And the tone got gainier.
Yeah.
And I think in interviews he said that it's just like his treble booster got more and more modified or got more and more broken. Like it just was like this one box that he was plugging into a Laney, and you know, as it kind of got modded, you know, somebody got his hands on it and modded it, made it more full range or something like that. You know, you hear like the tone on Never Say Die has a really weird EQ to it. But then on Technical Ecstasy, it has a much more of a modern vibe to it. Like it's really together on, and you know, they say in interviews Technical Ecstasy was like his record. It's like, you know, and maybe Never Say Die, I don't know. Never Say Die production is a little messier than Technical Ecstasy. Technical Ecstasy is like tight. Yeah. Like the tone is tight on that record. But then the biggest shift is when they go to the Dio years, because the story there is that, you know, you got Martin Birch producing, which is, you know, if we just talk about like the other players, you know, Tom Allom producing the first, you know, mix engineer on the first 2 records. That's why those tones are like so, like the whole record's so transparent. And then it gets, you know, it gets muddier in Master Reality and Volume 4. And then it gets, you know, kind of gets more modern in this and that. But once you get Dio and you have Martin Birch, and now it's like thick and, you know, gets more metal, right?
Less, it seems like less fuzzier tones, like thicker.
Yeah. So apparently, like they came in, Martin Birch comes in with kind of like the technician from, you know, Blackmore World came in, and like someone threw away the treble booster. Like, that's one story. I don't know if it's entirely true, but somebody was like, "What's this? It doesn't even work." Like, it's not what a treble booster is supposed to sound like. And they hooked him up with Marshalls, and he bought a chorus pedal, so it's like, that's the tone on Heaven and Hell. And his playing has a whole much more composed melodic vibe to it on Heaven and Hell. It's like a real progression there in terms of concept. It's not anything technical or whatever. It's just like conceptually, like he was there to, make these epics. And he also used that dotted eighth note delay at the end of Heaven and Hell, the words he's letting the feedback go, da da dee dun da dun da. And that's totally a Brian May influence.
Yeah.
Right? Which I don't know if it's Brian May influence that he liked to have a 0 fret on his all the custom made, the JD guitars, they have a 0 fret on them, which is, I have a Brian May guitar with a 0 fret on it, and I can't say that I think it's a great idea. I don't know. I don't want to, disagree with the maestros over there, right. But it's hard to keep that guitar maintained. So sorry, long question. Right. So long answer to a question. So then that's an amazing record for solos, right? Heaven and Hell production, everything. But then from production standpoint, like Mob Rules, the winner, like hands down. So end of story. Martin Birch, the drum sound is huge. You can, Bill Ward is obviously Sabbath, and you can say whatever you want, but Vinny Appice is amazing on that record. Dio's voice is like the best his voice was ever recorded. And you can literally hear the lyrics. He wrote lyrics just to make his voice sound good.
Why else? What other point is our lyrics? Right?
Exactly.
Like, don't you write riffs so that way your guitar sounds good?
And just the heaviness all over that record. And I think that's a mix of Marshalls and boogie. I think it's a small boogie combo for the top of Voodoo and that kind of stuff. But his tone remains great on all the Tony Martin things. And then on like Dehumanizer and 13 and stuff, you kind of hear like where he's been for the last like decade or, so, which is like it's that big, it's the Laney, it's the more modern Laney heads, or sometimes they get the reissue Laney heads and the Black Country Customs boost. And then there's a kind of a reverb, roomy sound on it, but he's still kicking. And the soloing on the Mob Rules record, that's where he's like, it's like stream of consciousness. If you listen to the 3 choruses of the Mob Rules solo, man, that is just insane. So
do you think he's a really improvisatory solo guy? Because some of his solos really sound worked out and composed, and other ones like sound like he's just letting it fly,
I think one of the reasons I don't dig the Born Again record that much is that the solos really sound like, yeah, man, let's get it down, and the tone on that record is like, I think he was back to using Laney's, but the Laney's weren't what you really wanted them to be again yet. They hadn't really they hadn't come out with like kind of something that paid homage to what they were, but was modern. It was like a really trebly sound, and the production, I can't remember who produced that record. I hope it's not Martin Birch.
It was Robin Black.
Born Again was Robin Black.
See,
Jinx.
I knew Martin would make a record that sounded like that.
So you've brought up, as we're talking about these records, and boy, am I learning a ton, but you've brought up sound quality in terms of production quite a few times. On some of these records, I feel like some of these records have been like remastered and re-released 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just seems to me that like it's like you said, those first 2 records have a certain sound. Then when you get to Master Reality Volume 4, then they get muddy. So it seems like my question, I think you kind of answered, was like you felt like Mob Rules was like, in terms of production, not so much performances and compositions, but in terms of production, Mob Rules is where they really got it right. Like Martin Birch should have produced the first 2 records. Right?
No, the first 2 records, Tom Alam, I mean, come on. He came, and then he went and did pop for years, and then he came back and made a little record called British Steel for Judas Priest. I mean, that guy's got some ears on him. He knows what he's doing. And so I love those first. I mean, it's a different type of production, but you have to think for the time that those first 2 records were made, they have a very, they have a tone that lasts. It's so fundamentally good that you can still put it up against other stuff and be like the kick, the Iron Man starts and you're like, yeah,
Oh man.
I kind of feel like, I feel like Tony's tone also is most consistent from the first record through Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Like, to me, it's like it feels not exactly consistent, but like that the sound is such a part of the way I feel about those records. His sound is so much a part of how I feel about those records.
Yeah. I don't think he would have changed his rig very much, and that was right. He was using more like that,
right?
And I think that when this guitar was, so this one is the current reissue, the Gibson USA, Tony Iommi. It's the monkey guitar, but it's not the Gibson custom version. It's the Gibson USA version, and it comes with the strap hook here, which I couldn't deal with, so I put it there. And
that changes the SG experience.
Yes, I was like, how does he do this? But I just loved it with the dots and the dot inlays and everything. I was just like, when am I going to have one of those? And it's like, okay, 2022 is when you're going to have one of those. It's a lifelong dream realized. But so John Birch, I believe that the pickups were the original pickups, but he rehoused them in this, kind of encasement. Because this is not just not on this, but I have the JD version of John Birch pickups, and it's not just a cover, it's like a casing. It's like but what comes on this are just regular Gibson P90s, but I think that's what I'm saying is that those were still regular Gibson P90s in the monkey guitar for most of that time. They had just been rehoused.
Oh, I see.
But because I used this guitar on the TSO gig, I got the Fralins, the noiseless Fralins for this with like an overwound
Those
bridge.
are great pickups. Those noiseless Fralin P90s are really good.
Yeah. It's got the snarl. It's great. Yeah. It's good. And
So,
I put this in.
Can you tell us about the other guitar? Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I have this in D standard.
Yep.
Which is the tuning for Tomorrow's Dream. Just happens to be.
All right. Yeah. Tell us about that other guitar you had.
Okay. Yeah. This is like kind of a, I don't know, 2020. There's their reissue of the SG Special. Right. So, it was Pelham Blue. I think it only came in like 2 colors. And so I had Joe Riggio do this finish on it. And then I ordered the pickups from JD Guitars in England. And these are the Old Boy pickups. And the finish is done to look like the Old Boy, which was made by John Diggins, JD Guitars. But really the guitar that he played on probably Never Say Die, Technology, Never Say Die. I'm not sure when he got it, but the black guitar, the John Birch black guitar, had John Birch pickups with 9 screws in each pickup.
Oh, right.
Okay.
And that's just because the screw heads are like as close together as you could possibly get them. And then once he got the old boy, he got the John Birch pickups, but they made him a rail pickup for the bridge position. But I think the guitar on Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules is the black John Birch guitar, which had 9 screws. So that's why I got these pickups from them. And I put this is a pigtail bridge. So it's a wraparound. Tony's had actual fine tuners on it. I can't remember what company makes it, but they don't make it anymore. So couldn't get that. And then I'm probably going to put even better tuners than these on it. These were just made to look like the Shallers that Tony had. But yeah, the pickups are kind of microphonic. I'm thinking about trying to get a pickup builder to make me something like it that's a little more like has contemporary capabilities because it's a little challenge.
So what are like, if somebody wanted to kind of try and cop Tony's tone, what are kind of the big buckets you need to hit? Maybe if they aren't able to go as in depth as you did and order the pickups from England and everything, but if we're thinking SG for sure, right? You need an SG with some humbuckers in it. Maybe a treble booster, probably.
Yeah. Well, I think, and you got to get thin strings and tune them down. It's like.
So do you keep what? I know you mentioned the red ones in D. What's this one in?
That one's in E flat because like Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules are in E flat.
Mm-hmm. And you keep them that way.
They've been all over the place in the last few years. I mean, I've done a lot of these like I've done a lot of YouTube videos where I'm like doing solos from various periods, and so I've retuned them a bunch of times to like I just picked this up to do this for you, and I picked it up. I was like, "What tuning is this in?" The guitar the strings are almost falling off I think it was in C sharp.
So are you thinking nines as your light strings, or even lower than that?
Well, Tony's were lower than that, but yeah, I wouldn't probably go lower than nines. Put nines on and take it down to E flat or D or C sharp standard. See how that feels.
Man, I've never played a guitar with 8s or even 9s for that matter tuned that low.
Yeah. It's a real different experience. Yeah. I mean, but it'll clue you into like a lot of stuff that you know from like, well, that's how Schenker does that, or that's how Brian May does that. That's it's like your touch becomes really different. In those things. But what was the thing like? Oh
yeah.
Right. It's just so easy to bend the G string, like almost a major third and stuff like that.
Why not do that all the time?
Yeah. I think because I do a lot of long bends, my Gilmore influence and stuff like that. But I think it was like trying to get through the voodoo solo. And I was like, oh, it's like on a regular guitar, I would almost have to like, but you can kind of just do what you want. And so anyway, so I'd start there, and then my main amp forever was this 1987X. So it's a non-master volume circuit. I would do that, and then some kind of treble booster. I have the Iommi boost. It's pretty good. There's some demo of a guy using the throwback booster. I should dig that video. Just it's like he plays all these Sabbath versions. It's like so bang on. I was like, oh, but I don't know. It was big, and it's like not gonna fit on your pedal board that well. I have the Iommi boost. I have the para pedal, wah wah pedal. Just trying to see if it's handy. I don't think it's handy. I think it's on one of my pedal boards right now. But yeah, I would get something something that can do a treble booster and some kind of like plexi style amp. I have the Laney 30 watt, and now they just I think Laney made a 20 watt with IRs and stuff. Okay. I think Laney is actually owned by, I don't know if it's Korg, but it's owned by, you know how like Black Star and Laney Vox are both making like amps with all these high tech implements in them. I think at NAMM, I realized they were all, I don't know if they were in the same booth, but like, I think they're all affiliated with somebody that's like kind of getting them their modern stuff, which is cool, man. I think Laney's a great brand, and I have that 30 watt. I went back to using this though for my more, if I'm going to do those tones, I went back to use the 50 watt Marshall. It's just tough to beat in an actual live setting. So anyway, I would get an amp that breaks up basically and a treble booster and have at it.
Man, low tunings and light strings. Man, he's like the Billy Gibbons of heavy metal.
Right.
You know? I mean, it's interesting because, you know, two people at opposite sides of the world have a similar approach to gear, light strings, you know, and just come out with such different tones. You know what I mean? Like it's incredible. I did pick up.
It also makes the trilling thing so much easier. Yeah. You know? That part, you know, and then shaking I always knew that I liked low bottom strings because just the way of like the. Yeah. You know, like that thing. It makes that a lot easier.
And it's like, there it is. That sounds like it.
So let's talk a little bit about some of his non-Black Sabbath stuff. So you mentioned he has a handful of fairly recent studio albums. He has the Iommi record, which came out in 2000, which I don't think it's on streaming. That was an interesting one because it had tons of guests on it. Right.
Right.
Then there's the DEP sessions. That was the thing with Glenn Hughes. And then there was Fused in 2005, which is another thing with Glenn Hughes. That one had Kenny Aronoff on it, Bob Marlette playing bass, Tony, of course, playing guitar. So what when you see these solo records, where do you hold these in the Iommi lineage of? Obviously, nostalgia plays a big factor in you loving those early Sabbath records. But what are you hearing on these later solo records?
Well, I don't think I've spent that much time listening to them. Unfortunately, I do put them on, you know, when they come out and stuff. Yeah, I mean, you know, but I think that for an artist of his stature to just want to continue making music, like I said, I never saw him like any live footage. The guy's never phoning it in. Like he's there to play. And I think that if he's got people that he's comfortable with that put him in a creative state of mind, it's just great that he's sharing the music with us. And, you know, I think it's a challenge for folks as they get older to, you know, find the right space to make the music where it's just like, you know, this is what I do. You know, this is something I'm proud of. Here you go. And they're not really bothered. They're not planning on selling out an arena tour of him and Glenn. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, you know, I think he said at one point about kind of the Tony Martin era. It was like that it was a question of somebody, I don't know, it was the producer of the label was working with him. It was just like, look, you know how to make albums. And, you know, you're the greatest riff writer of all time. It's like, you know, let's make a record, you know, and you know, he had to reconcile with like using the Sabbath name and all that kind of stuff. He had his reasons for doing that. And I'm sure that, you know, they're good reasons. Right. Because never underestimate. I mean, like, look at, you know, what's touring as Pantera right now. I mean, people need to use the band name in order to get the audience I think Bruce Springsteen said that he believes in the power of rock music, and he believed in it in the power of rock music when it's being enjoyed by a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
So if you're just saying like the only way to really enjoy this music is in an arena, like I have to do what I have to do to fill the arena. Then once I have you all here, like let's rock. That's a different experience than seeing it in an empty arena or in a theater or whatever. It's like, I went to see the End tour with Ozzy, Tony and Geezer and Clufetos on drums. And he was amazing. And Tony sounded amazing. I was at the Garden. It was full. Rival Sons opened. And my favorite memory of all of it was, well, it was my favorite, but one of my most interesting memories to me was when they're hitting the transitions between the songs. Like nobody does the transitions in Iron Man and those early songs where the tempos are shifting. Like nobody does it the way Bill did it.
Yeah. He just gets the feel and connects it.
It was the thing. Like that's how the song goes. And that's how Bill's always going to play the song, but everybody else is just trying to hit a mark that they,
right.
And no offense to those drummers that have taken the chair and done Mike Borden and all. I mean, they've all done amazing work, but it just always feels weird to me. Damn if
I saw the Stones this summer with Steve Jordan, and it's like I don't have a not great word to say about Steve Jordan. He's the best, but he's not Charlie Watts, right? Like he's the best guy to be Charlie Watts. He's the most authoritative guy to do that in the world. But they have separate DNA. So it's just going to be a little bit different, and you could feel it. And it's like, yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah. But damn, if Ozzy wasn't, they hit a transition and he was like with his left hand and it sped up, and then or he went like this and it slowed down. And I was just like, the old man is still calling the shots. The fact that they're doing it almost makes me want to cry, because you just know something is, I just hope everybody's okay health-wise and stuff like that.
So, Angus, I have 3 rapid-fire questions for you to wrap this up. Rapid fire number 1. Give us your best deep cut Iommi solo.
I don't know if it's a deep cut, but
one maybe underrated.
Over and Over, last song at the end of Mob Rules.
All right.
Lonely is the Word, last song on the Heaven and Hell record. Either one of those.
All right.
Full legend.
Give us the most underrated non-Ozzy album.
Most underrated. Eternal Idol, probably.
That's a good one. All right, final one. Top 3 Black Sabbath records based only on cover art.
Top 3 Sabbath just on cover art.
Just on cover art.
Okay. Gonna go Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Volume 4 and Heaven and Hell. I mean, the 3 nuns smoking, playing cards. Like, it's a legendary.
Can I throw in I didn't expect you to say this because I don't think it's quite as cool, but one that I really like that I think would be a good honorable mention is Never Say Die. That cover is so cool.
It is legendary. They're
it's
still
out of
using
character,
that imagery
a little bit, but it's pretty legendary.
I feel like Technical Ecstasy is the weirdest one.
That's also, it looks like a Yes cover or something.
Yeah, or like
not a Yes cover, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Hypnosis design. Yeah, I think that when I got to high school, there was a kid that, the whole thing was like having a denim jacket with like a album cover painted on it, and he had the Volume 4 cover painted on it. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I went and got a jacket, and I had the same guy that painted his jacket paint mine with the Mob Rules cover.
Dude, that's awesome.
I mean, there's something with like Volume 4 and Master Reality and even Paranoid where like just the font alone has become iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like the Clash, London Calling, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Angus, where can people, I know you're in the TSO off season. You normally, people can see you a lot with Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but what do you have coming up? Where can people go check out what you're doing?
Well, just check in on my Instagram at Angus Clark GTR.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing I update the most often. So I made a record last year with the Coons Clark Band. That's me and Jimmy Coons, singer from Savoy Brown and Humble Pie, and he's done a bunch of other. I made Cactus, using the Carmine Pieces Cactus. So me and Jimmy made this record with an amazing band, and we just started playing. We got a date coming up. We're just doing dates here and there. So, but I'll be announcing those, and me and Jimmy will probably do some duo shows, and then I'm also playing with my family from Rock of Ages, the band from the Broadway production, from the original Broadway production. We get together and we do just a concert performance, essentially an '80s tribute concert. It's the playlist of songs from the musical, but we just play them as ourselves. So it'd either be me on rhythm guitar and Joel on lead, or it'll be me on lead and Tommy Kessler from Blondie on rhythm, something like that. So and great singers, and so that's called Broadway's Rock of Ages Band. So Coons Clark Band, Broadway's Rock of Ages Band, probably other stuff. But go to Angus Clark GTR on Instagram, and you can find out about it there.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Angus.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So thanks to Angus. That was a fun talk. You know, I feel like I know a lot about Tony Iommi, and Angus knows a lot more about Tony Iommi.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to explore more of the Dio years, I think, is my takeaway from that. I just been hit over the head so much with all the Ozzy years, and for good reason. But I feel like there's some nuggets in the Dio and maybe even Tony Martin years that I can gleam.
There's so much to explore.
And I hope Tony puts out more music at some point. I mean, you know, I know he had that recent health scare that hopefully he's over, but I hope he has the Black Sabbath gig this summer, the final one.
Right.
But yeah, I hope
you going?
I might. Who knows? I'm a rascal, Nick. You never know. You never know. But yeah, I hope he puts out something, plays with somebody, does something. So
yeah, man. All right. So if you want to get at us, share a little thought about Tony or any of our upcoming features, send us a message 100-100 guitarists@premierguitar.com, and 319-423-9734 is the number to leave your voicemail or send us a text. And don't forget, give us a rating, give us a review, give us a subscribe, wherever you're finding your podcast, whether it's on YouTube and you're watching us or you're just on your podcast app. We would love the support.
That's right. And thanks again to Doc at Rocky Mountain Slide Company. Head on over to RockyMountainSlides.com. Links below in the diddly-doo. And go check out slides and picks. Do not sleep on those picks.
That's right.
You know, even if you might not fancy yourself a slide player, go check out the picks.
All right. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.